Hello and welcome to The Man Who Kept Dying. In today's video, let's talk about chapter 30, the epilogue of the novel. So, as you will understand, chapter 30 is the last chapter in the novel, The Man Who Kept Dying. But before I do so, I would like to share something with you, which is a bit personal. Because, you see, I recorded the video that's going to be the next video, which is going to be titled How Not to Write a Book, before this one. For some reason, I was struggling to get to record this video. I didn't really know how I would present it. And then something occurred to me. Over the last few months, I've done a lot of work on understanding some of my emotional triggers. And what I've been able to discover through all these phases by using different methods is that I don't like endings. And it's interesting to me because when I wrote the novel, it was quite unstructured. I will explain that in the next video. But also, I did not imagine how the novel would end. And if I were to write another novel, actually, I would do the exact same thing. I would set all the characters, all the setup, the sceneries, the background stories and everything. But I would not go into defining how the book should end, because I believe as you write it, then the end comes naturally. And you may not even think about it, as was the case for the novel The Man Who Kept Dying. However, the point I'm making with that is I know now perfectly well why I'm not comfortable with endings. And it's the notion of separation, and it's something that happened to me. I won't share much more detail, but basically at a very, very, very young age, and that created emotional responses. And it's quite interesting because even, like, say, when I was having an office job, an intern completing their internship would make me sad. So little things like that would actually always make me sad, but I was not really paying attention as to why. Now I know why. And that's why I had a bit of a struggle preparing for this video or knowing what I would say. So basically, I don't have any notes, not even mental notes. I'm going to go into the story live and raw. But I wanted to really share that because at the minute, that's why if the video may appear to be a bit choppy, it's because in a way, I'm still sort of dealing with that. And this notion of separation is also happening at the minute on a personal level too, through many different things, including our cat, Zenith, that is certainly living his last few weeks, if not his last few days. We adopted him about a year ago. We knew he could go at any time, but it seems to be happening now. So there is that notion of ending with him. And of course, we haven't lived with him for a long time, but you get attached to animals. So it's early July as I'm recording this video. It probably will be live in a few weeks. If anything happens to my furry friend, I probably will do a video in the meantime. So timing wise, don't be surprised. I was looking for that word. If you see there's a kind of a cat tribute video happening earlier than this video in which I'm talking about the cat. It's just a matter of when I'm recording versus when I'm publishing. But anyway, let's go to chapter 30 in the novel, the epilogue. And actually, an interesting thing about the book is, because I did open many parentheses, it's a difficult word to pronounce. I opened many brackets in the book, and I made sure that I would close them, especially for you as the reader. So I wanted to close the story of Mika. Mika, who finds his purpose in the novel in life is to be able to remember his spirit nature, and he really questions how to do that, because once you get to a human body, you forget that you exist as a spirit. That was just a cat passing by, and in the garden. That's why. And he is given the opportunity to remember the spirit side by experiencing a near-death experience. And that's what he chooses to do. As he does so, his life changes. So the book itself could end at chapter 28, which is the near-death experience, in which I'm recounting the near-death experience 99% as to what really happened to me. The chapter 29 takes you a few months later, in which you do get to see Mika as a completely changed individual. And he's got a new outlook on life, a new perspective on life, he's turned his life around. And again, the story could end at chapter 29 for you as the reader. However, I decided to give you a bit more and to not leave you in a way, not on a cliffhanger, but saying like, hang on, there were some unresolved questions or some unanswered questions. So what really happened here and there? So chapter 30, I've split in two parts. Part 1 is a change of guides for Mika. So if you've been following the videos or if you read the novel, you know that Mika's got a guardian angel whose name is Askaya, a Native American spirit, and he's got two alien guides. Akuk on one end, the most serious of the three guides, and Adonai on the other end, who's a very cheerful, buoyant, carefree character. She's an alien too, and she looks very unique. What I do in the first part of the chapter is that I introduce a new guide for Mika. The reason being that Mika, having changed his perception about life, now needs a different type of support. So he doesn't need to remember about the possibility of alien lives and so on. Now that he remembers that there is a spirit side and that he's got a soul and he exists on the spirit side, the type of support he requires changes. So Askaya calls forth a different guide whose name is Razakiel. Razakiel looks like an old man who looks like an old sage. The reason behind Razakiel, there is a specific reason behind Razakiel. He came to me in dream state. By now you should be used that a lot of things do come to me in dream state. I remember having conversation with that particular being. He was trying really hard to convey his name to me. And I was trying to say, what's your name? I don't really get it. It doesn't really translate into human words. And I got the name Razakiel. And even as I got the name Razakiel, it seems like that being was not fully convinced or saying like, no, you still don't get it. But I woke up and I remembered Razakiel. I decided in the novel to name it Razakiel because it's closer to the name, you know, of all the grand angels like Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and so on. So I made it Razakiel. And it made sense when I was writing the novel. So Razakiel is an ascended master, and he's going to help Mika on his path to physical and human mastery. Now, a month after having written the novel, I was doing a bit of research on Saint-Germain. And what's quite interesting is that Saint-Germain claims that he was coming from the Rakadzi family. So perhaps in my dream, I was interacting with Saint-Germain. He was telling me that his name was Rakadzi, and all I could understand was Razakiel. And as a result, in the novel, you've got a new guide who's an ascended master whose name is Razakiel. The guides, so Askaya, Razakiel, Adonai, and Akuk, they all meet and they all share stories about themselves, about life, and so on. And Razakiel asks Adonai to share a specific story in which she had an encounter with Mika when Mika was quite young. And I finished the chapter with actually the viewpoint of a wild animal living in Africa, and or a hippopotamus, I'm not sure how you pronounce this one correctly. I'm going to go with hippopotamus, hopefully that's the correct pronunciation, apologies if not. And Adonai actually was that wild animal. Now, I should mention something. At one point in the novel, Mika starts noticing that Adonai seems to really understand humans or human beings. She acts in a way that makes him realize that she must have been a human in the past, or at least she must have lived on Earth, because her character, the way she acts, the things she says, although she claims she's an alien and she's coming from a different planet, there are clues that are obvious to Mika that she knows more about humans than she pretends. So, in a way, for you, the reader, to answer that question, was Adonai a human or not, I included the second part of chapter 30, a story that is inspired by an event from my life. See, when I was young, I was living in Africa. We were living by the sea with my parents, so not through my own choice. And we were going to one specific beach, and on that beach there was a hippopotamus that was living on its own. As a kid, and I was, between 4 and 6 years old, I found it so exciting. To me, it did not look like a wild animal. It looked like a very, this round-shaped, curvy-shaped animal. It looked very gentle, very nice. However, people were always keeping their distance from the animal. Although it was a very peaceful hippopotamus, it never bothered anyone, it never charged at anyone. But my parents would say, don't go near it, you don't know how they might react. They're very wild animals, they're very strong animals. If they decided to get angry, trust me, they will get very angry at you. And no matter how fast you run, you don't really stand a chance. But as a kid, I found it fascinating. And we were going several times to that specific beach. And sometimes it would be there, sometimes it would not. So I had written that chapter as part of the different chapters from my life experiences, and I wasn't sure I was about to include it in the novel until that ending in the novel, where I thought that, well, actually it makes sense, I could just include it there, make it unfold from the viewpoint of Adonai, and confirm to you, the reader, that Adonai indeed had lived on earth. Mika does not get that confirmation, but it doesn't really matter to him because he's moving on with his life. But for you as a reader, I really wanted to make sure that I was leaving no stone unturned, and that you could get that explanation, or at least that confirmation, that Adonai indeed had not been a human, but she had been living among humans, and as a result, she knew very well about human behaviors. And it's true, the hippopotamus on that specific place did seem very cheerful and very nice and very gentle. And of course, when I wrote that chapter, I did a lot of research about this specific species. And what I found out surprised me, because they tend to live in group and they tend to be close to shallow waters. Because yes, they can hold their breath for quite a long time underwater, but they don't like currents because they are not good swimmers. So it was very surprising to me to discover that in fact, that wild animal I was sharing part of the beach with actually should have never been there. But for some reason, had settled there and was living perfectly fine on its own. And so, that is the story behind chapter 30 and the epilogue. Another element taken from my own life, and this time when I was quite young. Also, I wanted to end the novel on a cheerful note. And what better way to do it, in my opinion, than having a young, carefree Mika having a playful moment with a wild animal. I hope you enjoyed this chapter in depth. I hope you enjoyed the whole chapter in depth series, and I hope it brought you more insights into the dynamics behind some of the chapters, the true story that I translated into those chapters, the fact that sometimes some of those chapters are actually very close to my own life story, which in a way was very useful because I could really infuse those real life experiences that I've had into the novel itself. If you read the full novel, I hope you found it quite interesting, quite thought-provoking, but at the same time quite heartwarming and easy to read, because that was always the idea. In the next video, I will cover how not to write a book, or all the mistakes I did as I was writing my very first novel with very limited knowledge on all the things to do or all the steps to take into account. So stay tuned for the next video. In the meantime, okay, I think I managed to not do too bad for that video that seems like a bit of an ending to me as far as the chapter in-depth videos are concerned. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that life is good to you wherever you are. And I see you in the next video. Of course, until next time, you know the drill. Be conscious, my friends.